Imagine being surrounded by faces that appear kind, welcoming, and full of goodwill. Their words are polite, their expressions gentle, and their demeanor seemingly supportive. But beneath this pleasant surface, some of these individuals may be hiding emotions that are far less noble: envy, resentment, frustration, or even a quiet, burning hatred. These feelings aren't always visible at first glance. They rarely manifest through loud confrontations or explicit hostility. Instead, they creep in silently, in the background, concealed behind carefully chosen words and socially acceptable behavior. This hidden darkness is something Carl Gustav Jung, one of the greatest minds to explore the human psyche, called the shadow. According to Jung, the shadow represents the part of ourselves we repress, the traits, desires, and impulses we consider unacceptable or too uncomfortable to face. And though we try to hide these aspects from others, more often than not, we also hide them from ourselves. Yet the shadow has a way of surfacing. And when it does, it usually reveals itself not in strangers, but in our closest relationships. The ones we believe are built on trust, respect, and connection. And have you ever been near someone who says all the right things, but somehow makes you feel uneasy, as if something's off, though you can't quite put your finger on it? Their words may be wrapped in kindness, but your gut whispers that something isn't quite right. Don't ignore that feeling. It's not paranoia. It might be your deeper mind, picking up on what the surface cannot yet explain. It's often in those subtle moments, in a glance, a joke, a silence, that truth begins to slip through the cracks. In this exploration of the human psyche, we'll uncover several signs that someone close to you might be harboring unspoken negativity toward you. These signals are rarely loud or obvious. They hide in the background, disguised as normal interactions. But if you pay attention, you'll begin to see them for what they are: reflections of unresolved emotions, insecurities, and projections. Most importantly, recognizing these patterns may change the way you view your relationships and help you protect your emotional well-being before it's too late. Let's start with something that seems harmless on the surface: a joke. You might know someone who's always ready with a witty remark or sarcastic comment. People laugh. It's all in good fun, until you're left wondering why you don't feel like laughing. Maybe it's because the joke was about you. And maybe, if you think back, it wasn't the first time. Carl Jung pointed out that what we reject in ourselves often becomes what we ridicule in others. That's projection. When someone struggles with their own inner demons, they often deflect them outward, and you might become the target. These ironic remarks, often cloaked as humor, are rarely innocent. They may be a subtle form of emotional attack, a passive-aggressive way of expressing resentment or frustration. It's not direct. It doesn't provoke a fight. Instead, it leaves you unsure if you should feel hurt at all. And that's the danger, because if you tolerate these little cuts long enough, they accumulate. Without even noticing, you begin to question your worth. Your confidence starts to erode, and you become more susceptible to further attacks. To recognize this for what it is, pay attention to repetition. A random sarcastic comment here and there may be harmless. But if someone consistently can't celebrate your achievements without injecting criticism disguised as humor, it's time to question their intent. Ask yourself, are these remarks coming from a place of affection, or are they slowly undermining you, eroding your sense of self piece by piece? Jung taught us that the unconscious mind never lies. People may speak with a smile, but their true feelings are written between the lines of their actions, in the pauses between their words. And it doesn't stop there. Hostility often wears different masks. Sometimes it shows up in small, almost invisible acts of sabotage. Imagine you share a personal goal with someone, a new project, a promotion you're working toward, a dream you're finally chasing. At first they nod, they say all the right things, but then things start to go wrong. A task they promised to help with is mysteriously delayed. You receive advice that leads you astray. Details you trusted them with are accidentally shared with others. At first, it all seems coincidental, but then you start to notice a pattern. Jung believed that these subtle acts of sabotage are often rooted in envy, a part of the shadow self that people are deeply ashamed of. Instead of confronting their jealousy, they channel it into behaviors that seem supportive on the surface, but actually undermine you. They might offer encouragement that feels hollow. They might smile while steering you away from your path, and all the while, they maintain the illusion that they're on your side. But deep down, your success threatens them. It reminds them of what they feel they can't achieve. And instead of facing that inner truth, they unconsciously try to pull you down. Watch for these moments closely. They don't always look like sabotage. They often look like accidents, like misunderstandings. But if you consistently feel confused, delayed, or misled around someone you thought you could trust, it's time to examine the dynamic more carefully. Jung believed that awareness is the first step to liberation. Once you recognize the pattern, you can choose to protect your energy, to distance yourself, or to confront what's been quietly eating away at your progress. And then there's another sign, just as insidious: the absence of true support when it matters most. Jung taught that authentic relationships are built through mutual presence, especially in times of significance and vulnerability. Life brings us into close proximity with many people. Some are physically near, friends, relatives, colleagues. Yet when the moment comes for them to show emotional presence, something essential is missing. You may reach out to share an important success or lean on them during a moment of sorrow, expecting connection. But what you find is emotional absence. Apathy. Their response feels mechanical, cold, as if they are simply checking off a social obligation rather than truly being with you. This indifference is not always blatant. It may appear wrapped in excuses. "I've been busy," "I'm just tired," or "I forgot." But when these absences form a consistent pattern, the truth begins to emerge. Carl Jung would interpret this as a dissociation of the self. When a person refuses to confront and integrate their own shadow, their unresolved fears, resentments, and suppressed emotions, they slowly lose the capacity for genuine empathy. They may still function outwardly, say the right words, and maintain appearances, but inwardly they've become disconnected, numb, unable to meet you with sincerity when you need it most. Watch closely. How do they react when you share something meaningful? Do they listen with interest, offer real acknowledgement, or do they steer the conversation away, as if your feelings are an inconvenience? Jung reminded us that we seek relationships that nourish and empower us, not ones that drain us silently. If someone repeatedly diminishes or avoids what matters to you, take a moment to reflect on how that might be shaping your inner world. Protecting your energy sometimes means creating distance from those who cannot or will not honor it. Then there's the matter of quiet rivalry. Not every competition is obvious. In fact, the most corrosive ones often remain unspoken. Jung observed that we often project the disowned parts of ourselves onto others. That includes jealousy, inadequacy, the feeling of not being good enough. When someone has not reconciled these inner fractures, they may experience your growth, your progress, even your happiness as a threat. And instead of confronting that discomfort within, they begin to compete silently. It won't be declared openly. Instead, it manifests in subtle, everyday moments: a backhanded compliment, an urge to correct you over trivial things, a sudden shift in tone when you share something positive. You announce an achievement, and rather than celebrating with you, they rush to mention something they've done. Their words seem supportive, but there's an undercurrent, a need to level the playing field, to assert that they too are doing just fine. as if your success leaves no room for theirs. These aren't accidents, they're the unconscious acting out of unresolved tension. If you often leave interactions with this person feeling drained, diminished, or like you're in a constant unspoken contest, pay attention. Jung taught that true personal growth begins when we detect these projections and reconsider their place in our lives. Not every relationship is meant to be nurtured. Sometimes self-preservation requires us to withdraw from silent battlegrounds and stop feeding dynamics that slowly wear down our spirit. And then there's the kind of hostility that operates in the shadows, not through what is said to your face, but through what is whispered behind your back. Jung frequently explored how the human psyche uses defense mechanisms to cope with inner conflict, and gossip is a classic example of such projection. A person who cannot manage their own insecurities may begin to displace them onto you, twisting truths, spreading half-facts, or subtly undermining your character in conversations where you're not present to defend yourself. This isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's just enough to plant a seed of doubt, a misplaced detail here, a subtle jab there, but over time, the impact accumulates. You may start noticing shifts in how mutual acquaintances behave, catching fragments of confusion in their tone or feeling as if something is being left unsaid. That's not your imagination, it's a signal. Jung would see this behavior not as a reflection of your worth, but of the internal disorder of the person projecting it. Still, left unchallenged, these indirect attacks can seep into your emotional landscape and alter your self-perception. Confronting this dynamic requires courage. It means setting boundaries, asking difficult questions, and choosing clarity over comfort. Even though these offenses may seem indirect, their toxicity is very real, and protecting your emotional well-being means not allowing that toxicity to live rent-free in your mind. You don't need to explode or retaliate, but you do need to assert yourself and define what you will and will not tolerate. Perhaps one of the most painful signs that someone holds hidden resentment is their inability to celebrate your success. You share a joyful moment, an accomplishment, a personal milestone, and instead of receiving warmth or congratulations, you're met with silence, detachment, or vague, dismissive comments. There's no real joy in their eyes, no shared excitement, just a distant nod, a forced smile, or a sudden change of subject that makes it clear they don't wish to dwell on your happiness. This lack of emotional resonance isn't trivial. It reveals something deep. Jung taught that what we cannot accept in ourselves, we resist in others. And so, if your progress reminds someone of their stagnation or unfulfilled desires, their unconscious response may be to downplay or ignore what you've achieved. They may not even realize they're doing it, but you will feel it. A coldness where warmth should be, a void where support once lived. Notice how these people behave when your life takes a positive turn. Do they withdraw? Do they seem irritated, distant, or suddenly uninterested in your story? These reactions aren't just social awkwardness. They may be signs that your happiness triggers something unresolved in them. It's not your responsibility to fix that, but it is your responsibility to recognize when your joy is not welcome and to protect it accordingly. Even though we may share physical proximity with certain people in our lives, emotional closeness does not always follow. There are moments that call for celebration, or those when we desperately seek comfort. When we realize that someone we expected to be present instead reveals a striking emotional distance. Rather than offering genuine support, they deflect, downplay what you feel, or respond in a mechanical, almost rehearsed way. This coldness isn't accidental. As Carl Jung explained, such behavior often stems from a dissociation of the self, a refusal or inability to reconcile with one's own shadow. In failing to integrate their own suppressed emotions, the individual becomes detached from others' joys and sorrows alike. This emotional withdrawal is frequently disguised with convenient excuses, lack of time, fatigue, or forgetfulness. But over time, a repeated pattern begins to expose the deeper truth. Pay close attention to how this person reacts when you share something meaningful. Do they listen with genuine interest? Do they celebrate your achievements, or do they quickly change the subject, as if your experiences hold no weight? Jung reminded us that we naturally seek relationships that nourish and uplift us. If someone consistently ignores or minimizes what matters to you, it's worth considering the toll this may take on your emotional well-being. Recognizing this dynamic is crucial in protecting your energy and surrounding yourself with people who validate you and support your growth. Another subtle but powerful sign is the presence of silent competition. Jung believed that this often arises when someone projects their repressed insecurities onto another person. This rivalry rarely manifests overtly. Instead, it takes the form of casual remarks that mask a deeper tension. When you share a success, this person feels compelled to match it, not out of shared joy, but from a need to assert themselves. They may challenge you in trivial matters, diminish your achievements, or immediately turn the spotlight on their own accomplishments. Over time, this pattern becomes easier to spot, especially if you often leave interactions feeling drained or subtly undermined. According to Jung, true personal growth involves identifying these projections and re-evaluating how they shape our lives. If you recognize this kind of dynamic, it may be time to reconsider how much of your energy is being invested in a relationship that feels more like a quiet battle than a source of mutual support. Another telltale sign is when someone speaks ill of you behind your back, distorting facts or spreading half-truths. Jung often spoke of psychological defense mechanisms, and malicious gossip is a classic example of shadow projection. Those who can't manage their own frustrations or insecurities may unconsciously attempt to erode your image in order to soothe their internal chaos. Even when the criticism isn't direct, it carries just enough doubt to shake others' perception of you. To detect this, observe subtle shifts in how people treat you. Small changes in tone, inconsistencies in shared information, or the presence of untrue rumors. Jung saw these behaviors as signs of unresolved inner conflict within the person spreading them, yet if left unchecked, they can still impact your emotional balance. Confronting such situations with clarity and firmness is essential. Even when the attacks are indirect, their toxicity can seep into your daily life. Be assertive and set clear boundaries to safeguard your mental and emotional health. A further sign is the inability or unwillingness to celebrate your accomplishments. Jung explained that unacknowledged feelings like envy or resentment often manifest through emotional detachment during moments that should be filled with shared joy. Instead of congratulating you sincerely, a friend or family member might respond with vague remarks, indifference, or even belittle your success. These responses, though subtle, hint at something deeper, a personal sense of inadequacy or failure that is stirred by your progress. The unease they feel in witnessing your success is, at its core, a reflection of their own inner conflict. You'll notice they try to change the subject or dismiss your joy, sending a clear message that your happiness is not something they are willing or able to confront. If this kind of emotional coldness is consistent, it's a red flag worth paying attention to. Jung emphasized that these reactions say far more about the person exhibiting them than about your worth. Your emotional health depends on remembering that your value is not determined by the approval of others. Choose to be surrounded by those who truly celebrate your victories. Another revealing moment arises when you find yourself vulnerable, when you're hurting, uncertain, or in pain, and the other person seizes the opportunity not to comfort you, but to assert dominance. Jung believed that how someone responds to another's suffering speaks volumes about the state of their psyche. If instead of offering empathy, the person maintains emotional distance, behaves coldly, or even blames you for your pain, it's often because they are unable to face their own vulnerability. By rejecting your pain, they avoid confronting their own fragility. Sometimes they may even grow visibly irritated, treating your suffering as an inconvenience. This lack of compassion creates an invisible barrier that prevents genuine emotional closeness. To identify this pattern, reflect on how the person behaves when you're going through physical or emotional hardship. Do they truly show up for you, or do they subtly invalidate your experience? Jung believed that healthy relationships are built on mutual empathy. If this empathy is absent, your connection may be tainted by emotional toxicity. In such cases, it's vital to set firm boundaries and seek out those who genuinely care about your well-being. Closely tied to this is the issue of control and manipulation. Jung observed that those who try to control others often do so because they feel a lack of control within themselves. Their attempts to steer your decisions may come under the guise of concern or advice, but at their core, they serve to align your path with their own desires, not yours. This manipulation might be subtle, wrapped in politeness or disguised as wisdom. But your psyche, Jung noted, will detect the imbalance, even if you can't yet articulate it. These individuals may constantly criticize your choices, cast doubt on your judgment, or question your loyalty in order to redirect your actions. In doing so, they weave a narrative that makes you feel dependent on their approval, all while quietly suppressing your autonomy. To break free, ask yourself, are your choices truly your own, or are they being shaped by someone else's shadow? Jung emphasized that growth requires reclaiming your independence and recognizing when your actions are no longer aligned with your values. Exposing and disrupting these manipulative patterns is key to restoring your emotional freedom. Throughout this journey, we've explored how the shadow, the hidden aspects of the human psyche, can manifest within our closest relationships, often revealing hidden resentments or hostility that we may have long overlooked. For Jung, facing these truths head-on is not only necessary for personal growth, but for genuine self-understanding. Recognizing the behaviors we've discussed isn't just about identifying those who might harbor ill will. It's also about becoming aware of how the energies around us influence our emotional health and personal development. Jung believed that bringing the unconscious to light offers the chance to liberate ourselves from toxic dynamics and live more authentically. Everyone carries a shadow within them. That's human. But what separates healthy relationships from harmful ones is the willingness to face those inner conflicts with awareness, balance, and responsibility. If you sense that someone in your circle is nurturing negativity toward you, you're left with two choices: confrontation or distance. Jung once wrote that what you do not confront becomes your fate. A powerful reminder to stay vigilant and protect your emotional energy. Build connections based on mutual respect and reciprocity. If this message brought you clarity or helped you reevaluate your relationships, I invite you to reflect further, to explore these ideas with those around you, and to stay open to the work of deep inner transformation. The path to healthier relationships and a balanced life begins now.